Welcome to ADF Clergy Tea Time, the first pouring. This is the first edition in a series of online panel discussions that feature several members of our ADF clergy. In this series of panels, we will be getting to know them better, discover more about their experiences, and how to best engage with them in their roles as clergy. Let's meet our first pour panelists.
William Ashton. Born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana, Reverend William attended Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado, where in 2007 he graduated with a degree in religious studies, minoring in psychology. Currently residing in Longmont, Colorado, he was ordained as a priest in ADF in 2014 and founded the Mountain Ancestors Grove. He spends his time playing mandolin and some guitar, writing, engaging in LGBTQIA+ advocacy and education, and community service. Ayliah Cannon. Born and raised in rural New Hampshire, Aaliyah served in the Navy until honorably discharged in 1988. She has pursued a professional career in tennis and is currently a competitive ballroom dancer. She has published stories and articles on inclusion and PTSD. Ordained in 2011, she leads a local pagan community group and is active in leadership at her UU, where she has led many services. Lauren Mart. Reverend Lauren Mart joined ADF, a Druid Fellowship, in 2012 after a rather eclectic 10-year romp through the ranks of modern paganism. Ordained in April 2018, she is the Senior Druid Emeritus of Nine Waves Grove ADF in Houston and is currently starting anew in North Texas with Blue Heron Proto-Grove. Her primary hearth work draws from the British Isles, and her main practice takes cues from both historical and modern customs. She has a weakness for books and for fountain pens, and in a previous life was almost definitely a hobbit. Jon Pagano. Drum joined ADF in 1984. He is a senior priest and also a member of OBOD and RDNA. He is the author of 7 books, takes bass guitar lessons, ballet, and runs every day. He believes in the family of Druidry and is a presenter and blogger in the pagan community. JD Hickey. And finally, myself as the moderator for today's panel discussion. I'm a storyteller bard living on the tropical island of Montreal, Quebec, Canada. I'm a member of Thornhaven Grove in Inkerman, Ontario, and I'm still working on completing the Dedekin program. I've been organizing and leading public rituals in the Montreal community for almost 10 years. I'm a huge nerd, and in addition to storytelling, I'm also a cosplayer in the steampunk and pirate communities. Okay, so when we did the panel discussion, I forgot to start the recording at the beginning, and so I missed the first response to the first question, which my Lauren here has very kindly agreed to re-record. So we're going to do this now. It's being done after the original panel discussion was done, and then we're going to just segue seamlessly into the rest of the panel discussion that was recorded. So Lauren, thank you very much for meeting with me to re-record your first answer.
Of course.
So the first question was, we were going over the people's roles as clergy. So the first question was, what are your responsibilities to your grove as opposed to ADF membership?
So many of you may know me as the Grove Priest of Nine Waves Grove in Houston, which I was. I started that grove as a study group in 2012, and then it is now a fully chartered grove. But in 2020, I actually handed that grove off and am no longer a member because I no longer live in Houston. I'm still in Texas, but I've moved about 300 miles north. So when I was a grove priest, my responsibilities to the grove were kind of complex. In a lot of ways, I was like a part-time clergy person. I was responsive to emails and texts. I was setting up regular pastoral care meetings with people. I did a lot with the Grove, and up to and including at one point, I was the only person in the Grove with a pair of jumper cables. So I would get phone calls from somebody, hey, I'm at the grocery store and my battery's dead. Can you come jump my car? So I did kind of all of that for close to 8 years. And when I was doing that, and it was taking 15 or 20 hours a week, I was not particularly responsive to the membership of ADF as a whole, other than kind of on an individual consult level. I was always there on Facebook. I've always been there, on the web, on Discord or whatever, via text message. And if somebody needed something from me specifically, I was always available for a particular need, or an hour of conversation, or to do divination or something like that. But my primary responsibility at that point was to the 25 or 30 people that I was closely in a ministerial relationship with. But since March of 2020, I am no longer in that relationship with those people, obviously. And my relationship to the whole of ADF is now much more open, and I'm doing a great deal of ministry online. And that ministry is not limited then to my geography. The internet is a beautiful thing. And so my relationship as now a solitary priest, my relationship to ADF members as a whole is much more available. It's not necessarily any different, which is to say that, I'm still available, for Facebook messages, or, just have a conversation on Discord. I actually just had a pastoral conversation yesterday with somebody that I had not known until they messaged me on Discord looking for some help with some stuff. And so I do that kind of work a lot, but I now do it with a much wider audience. And I'm finding that I really enjoy that. I really enjoyed the 8 years that I spent in close ministerial relationship with my Grove. This is a different kind of priesting. And it is differently satisfying, but it's very satisfying as well. So it's not like I feel like I'm like my work is any less valuable because it's not happening face to face at a coffee shop, which of course, the pandemic has meant that nobody is doing much face to face at a coffee shop. So that change actually happened. I mean, I moved in April of 2020, literally 2 weeks after the pandemic started. So that shift happened at the same time as all of us, as all of the ADF priests, had to transition to primarily doing our work, our ministry online. I just, also transitioned out of that close relationship with a Grove at the same time. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. All right. Well, thank you very much for re-answering that question. And now we are going now to move into the panel discussion.
All right. I hope it goes well. And I remember lovely things about it. I hope y'all enjoy.
Thanks.
Aaliyah, how do you feel about this? What are your responsibilities to your Grove as opposed to the membership? Do you have?
Well, since I don't have a Grove, and I've never actually had a Grove, my responsibilities to the membership are really to represent it the best I can in the pagan community at large. And I have a responsibility to the membership to serve them in the same way. I watch for people that are in need, someone who's struggling or something, that I'll reach out a lot of times in Messenger. I do a lot of my work behind the scenes, and I have mentored people in the past. I do course reviews, but a lot of my work is actually behind the scenes since I don't have a Grove.
Okay. Slightly different question for you, William. What are your responsibilities beyond ADF in terms of the public at large as clergy?
So this is a discussion I was having with Lauren about 2 weeks ago, give or take. And we were talking about what it means to be a druid in the world, and what that looks like, and like, who's your responsibility? If we look at the historic druids, we see that Druids served the particular group or area and were, community sanctioned Budinskis into people's business, and people were okay with that, and they kind of managed the affairs of things. Well, we live in a global society now. Like, as much as we want to believe that we're tribal or small group or anything else, I mean, ADF was built in one of the things when we compared ourselves to the groups at the time is that we were large group oriented as opposed to small group oriented. And I think every priest has the opportunity to interpret that in their own ministry. For me, I've taken, because I have a university experience at a very unique, privileged private university, I take that to mean the world at large and humanity. Like, I believe that druiding, as it were, in the right ways, with right mind, right body, as well as right spirit actions, that can actually transform the world. So I try to take that into the public at large, as it were. I inquire after people, even if I don't know them, because they're, in a way, my responsibility. As a druid who is serving this area, I feel responsible that if this person is sad, if they're someone who's checking you out for a pack of gum at the grocery store. As a druid, you're a sensitive being. You have been trained to be sensitive. So if you sense that there is something off with a member of the public and you have it within your capacity to interact with that person and help, then I think you should. And that's kind of how I interact with the public as a whole. No one is unsure that I am a pagan religious professional who's trying to help at any given time. So.
Okay, thank you, William. Same question for you, Drum. What are your responsibilities beyond ADF in terms of the public?
Well, I think that I actually like William's term about druiding. I think that we're here to help. I think that's the calling of a priest, is to help. And because I'm a member of other groups, just as opposed to just ADF, I also kind of, as Ayliah had said, kind of look behind the scenes and read people's messages and posts to see if they need help. I think it's kind of there's kind of a forward-looking method and kind of a sideways-looking method, whereas people do come to me. They don't have to necessarily be druids for assistance or information or direction. And by direction, I mean as a resource, where can I look for this? But the sideways looking glance really is about, seeing if there's people on the internet, on Facebook, whatever the method is, that need help, because there are people out there who say, I need prayers, I need this. I have a fairly well-established private practice of doing prayers for people, which I think most of the clergy does. And so I ask people if I can include them if they need that help. So I think we're always looking. While I may be an IT professional, that's what I do, to put food on the table. It's really being a druid, and that is really what I do. It is what I do. And I think that, once again, William brings up a really good point. We lead by example. I think if we do right practice, I think that really rubs off on the universe and on those around us. So we try to help, I guess, is the basic answer.
All right, thank you. Now, when I approached the membership on the Facebook group originally about talking about, it was born of a conversation where people felt maybe a little disconnected from clergy, as if they were in a tower apart. And so I'm wondering, how would you encourage members to interact with you? Because there's also a feeling like, well, I mean, Drum is the arch druid. I can't be bothering him with this little thing, or Lauren is the head of the Grove. I'm sure she's got other things to do than engage with me on this thing. How would you like the ADF membership, not only within your own groves, but just the membership at large? What's the best way to engage with you?
I'll start with that one. One of the things that I do intentionally If you have any engagement with me online or in real life, I've been told I am authentic to the point of being uncomfortable, which is intentional. Being an ordained person doesn't mean I don't struggle with the same questions. It doesn't mean that I don't have the same doubts or fears or, you know, weird experiences or whatever else. It means I've got a couple of years of training under my belt and somebody handed me a toolkit with some stuff in it and a t-shirt that says, "Hi, I'm here to help." But I still have those struggles, and I try and make those very transparent. And I try very much, I frequently do posts on Facebook or on Twitter. I put things up on my blog that say, you need a thing right now, like here's the space. I am doing a prayer weekend. Do you need prayers, offerings, whatever? Put them here, direct message me. Like I am available to priest for you. And I do that fairly regularly. And often when I do that, I build connections, whether or not they're intentionally done or not. And through that, I think I have more connection with the ADF membership as a whole. I don't do a lot of that on the main ADF Facebook page, just because my real life has been a lot recently, and so there's only so many avenues that I have to be able to carry. But know that none of us as priests have it figured out. We have some training, and maybe the questions are a little different, but there are no questions that you can ask that I would be afraid to answer. How's that?
Okay, good. Anyone else? I can point.
Well, I'll jump in here.
Aaliyah? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Aaliyah.
One of the things that I do is that I do a lot of the same kinds of things that Lauren just mentioned. I post purposely on Facebook things that I think some people might need to hear right now. I think there's a lot of people that are struggling with disconnection and disenfranchisement, and they need to hear that other people are struggling too. And you know, the question was, how can people reach out to us? Well, I can tell you how people can reach out to me. They can always contact me on Facebook. I'm available. I don't post so much in the ADF group because I watch the posts in there, and they tend to be a little bit more educational and not so much helping out individual people with their issues. I did that a while back, and it didn't seem to get a lot of response, so I just stuck to my own page. But I'm always available, and if I have a contact with someone on Facebook, and that is my primary means of connecting with people, then I send them a friend request so that they know that I'm available. But I think one of the important things to do is that we connect people. To go back to what William was saying, you know, we connect with people everywhere. It's not just an ADF. If you see us, you know, reach out to us. I see people, you know, I didn't get a chance to answer the other question about how we drew it in the larger world. And, you know, because I'm more involved in the larger spiritual community. In my bio, I mentioned I'm a leader in the UU. I'm in charge of the membership, and I'm also on the worship committee, and I lead several lay services there. And, you know, I reach out to those, you know, because I'm a part of that spiritual community. I have to make myself available in whatever means I can. So I keep my eyes open for people who are looking for someone to reach out to them.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak to this question? I can restate it. How can the membership best engage with the clergy, with our clergy?
I'd like to take a pop at that. I think that most of us are on Facebook, on Messenger. We have email addresses out there, and I think that that's probably the easiest way to reach us. And as Ayliah said, when people message me, I do try to friend request them just so that I have them, kind of at the ready. I know that one of the things they're working on with the new ADF website is to make information about the clergy more upfront, so that if you need a priest, it's easier to find. Right now, it's not so easy to find. And so we want to make it easier to find. And I think the regional druids are working on something where, if you look at, this particular region, then, you see that William and Missy are there. And you look at this, region, you see these people are there. So it makes it a little bit, the idea is to make it easier for people to identify, not only within the regions, but, generally speaking, where those priests are. My number is listed in the ADF, on the ADF website if people need to reach me on the telephone. I generally try to be as available as much as possible. And I think that's fair to say for most priests.
And my Facebook presence is kind of intermittent, but I am always on Messenger. But I am always on Discord as a platform, because I moderate several communities there. And if you send me a friend request and say, I'm from ADF, or like I see a message and I know, like I see that we're shared in the ADF Discord server, like that, you will get through 100% of the time. And I'm pretty present in an online sense, even more so than I would be like in a text message sense. And I'm always there, and those kind of conversations will always take precedence, even if I have to say, sorry, right now I'm in a meeting with my boss or whatever. Right now I'm eating dinner with my kids. I will always give you a time and a space for us to talk about, whatever the thing is, even if it's just to say, here's a picture of the altar. Something that I've started doing, and William has seen this because he's gotten a couple of them, is when I get the altar fired up for prayers for somebody, I will actually video it on my phone. And so I will, light the altar and get the thing set up, get the charcoal lit. And then as I'm making the offerings, I will speak prayers. And then you get a video of somebody actually speaking a specific prayer for you. And I would do that for anybody that I know needs it, which right now is a fairly small community, but that's an opportunity. If you need prayers and you want to hear those prayers spoken aloud, ping me on Facebook. I will set it up. I will get it going. There's something, in my experience, having been the recipient of this, and to be perfectly honest, I got this practice from Mike Dangler. I did steal it. There's something different about somebody saying in a message with words, I'm praying for you, from then getting a video of the person actually doing the thing. It hits different. And so I try and make that a regular practice as much as I can. Which is to say, anybody on this call, if you need it, you know where I am.
I'd feel left out if I didn't answer this question, so why not? So I just want to get behind everything that my sibling clerics have said in this, in their answers. There's website challenges. I mean, I'm looking at the members homepage right now, and the fact that there's not like get in touch with clergy people, religious folk, on there is a little frustrating, and it's delightful to hear that that's being addressed. Thank you, people who are doing that. To just say, we're accessible, we're required when we become priests to make all of our contact information accessible. But if you don't know who we are, and that's a hard thing to find or whatever else, just want to say that that's real too. I think the part that I'd like to add is Hobbes kind of gave an example earlier of like, oh, they're too busy and this and that, and what if I, and this kind of trepidation about reaching out to us because we're in some different realm or some other kind of baloney. We're just folks. I'd like to offer as an opportunity to look to the virtues, practice courage, okay? Trust in our integrity. Look to those virtues for reasons that may be stopping people from getting in touch with us. I understand like the physical accessibility part, and there's a part that we could always look to, looking into ourselves at every moment to make ourselves better, stronger beings. Is there anything that is residing within you that's arising from within that's stopping you from getting in touch with us? So practice in those areas, look toward those things. Embrace courage, hit us up, because we are very willing to help. Like we're here and trained up and ready to do the thing. And even though I Buttinsky and Facebook, you know, check people and look for sad things and look for life moments, I take that upon myself to do that. I practice my own courage in reaching out to, you know, folks in the community, just cold. Hey, saw you were sad. What's going on? I invite y'all to embrace that same courage practice and just hit us up. Just do it. Just do it.
So what I'm hearing is that, Drum, you were bringing up this, it sounds like there's a more formal process that's in play or being constructed, like through the website, that if you're looking for a clergy person, that you'll be able to click on is that what I'm hearing? That you'll be able to click on a service that someone will assign you, or?
I think it's going to be, you know, I think it's going to say, hey, here's the clergy. And, you know, maybe they can build hyperlinks into that have, you know, our names and a way to contact us, like an email address would probably be the easiest. I mean, as many of the people I think on this call may have that already in their bios, that if they're out there, but, you know, I'll talk to the web team about that. That would be the easiest, because then you can just click on that person and send them a message. And, you know, no one's, you know, William's right, a little courage, everybody's here to help, and we'd be more than glad to do so. But I will mention it to the web team about, if they haven't already done it, about adding the links to those clergy names. That would be really nice.
Something that, go ahead, Hobbes.
No, go ahead, Lauren. Go ahead.
Something that I like personal goal for myself. I don't have a bio up on the website yet, which is a little embarrassing. I've been ordained almost 4 years, but I will for sure make sure that my bio has, you know, all the different ways that you can contact me, as well as the kinds of things that I am good at and like doing. And so hopefully then somebody can page through the clergy and, you know, click and see, okay, you know, here's Lauren. She does, you know, this kind of divination, and she does one-on-one work, and she does these things, and she's available to anybody in this, you know, distance of this place. And, you know, you click on the links to get in touch with her. That kind of information is, I will start that trend in my bio on the clergy website. So.
As part of this panel discussion, I had you write a bio, so you're already halfway there. So
yes,
you know, including your side hustle as a hobbit. So you're doing great. This is already producing good things. So what if you have someone in clergy, a non-clergy, in the membership, that they have an issue, but they don't know who to reach out to, right? They have they're seeking spiritual counseling, or they have a service they need to have done, like a baby blessing, or I don't know what. They have a need, they need clergy, but they don't know who to contact. Is there a process that they can go through to find someone who is qualified to answer their need?
I'd like to take a swing at that one, if I could, please, Hobbes.
Yes, of course.
You know, if you ever had any questions about anything with ADF, you can always contact the members advocate. I mean, he's there to, or they are there to, you know, help guide and direct membership. Or you can write, you know, or check with the ADF office. There is a place that you can check and say, hey, I need some information. That's one way to do that. The members advocate is very, you know, capable and responds very quickly. So that is a way to do things. There's also on the ADF website, I'm going to put the link up here in the chat, but there's a spot called Clergy Skills and Strengths, and a number of the clergy have their information listed there, kind of what their skills and strengths are. And while it's not all the clergy are on there, that's one place that people could look to as well. But actually, any of the Mother Grove, any of the priests on this call, we'll if we don't know, if we can't do it, we'll send you to someone who we believe will be able to help you with that.
Another option is always to get in touch with your regional druid. They know the people who are in their region, and especially if you need something like an in-person service. If you need a baby blessing, if you need somebody to officiate a wedding, if you need a funeral, my goodness, ping the members advocate or ping your regional druid, and they'll start the phone tree basically to see who can get there. That's something that one of the things that we make an oath to do when we become priests is to serve the folk. And that includes sometimes taking on things that are a little bit of a lot. And that might mean, my driving to Oklahoma City to do a funeral, right? Like we do the thing. And that's part of what we do. And so don't be afraid to ask and see if we can make that happen. And there are funds available. The Clergy Travel Fund is there for that reason, is to get a clergy person to where they need to be. So we're not doing it out of our own pockets. And I don't know that everybody knows that that's there, but talk to the members advocate, talk to your regional druid, and we will try and make it happen.
Okay, I see Linda has raised her hand. Linda, do you have something you would like to ask?
Yeah, Lauren, your assumption may be that the regional druids know who the priests are in our region, but that's part of the reason why we need to set up the listing of what priests are in what region, is because we don't know.
Oh, okay. For sure. I'm in such close relationship with Ravina that like I figured most of the regional druids knew that stuff. So apparently we need to get on that.
In my region, I know of 3 priests, and one of them is Aaliyah, and I didn't know that she was in my region until this morning.
All right. Well, hey, Drum, I know you're in contact with the web team a lot more than I am. Can we make that a thing? You're a geographic priest locator?
Well, that's one of the things I mentioned before that they're working on for the regional druids.
Excellent.
And just in general.
Fabulous.
Yeah, that's why we're working on it, is because, and people move, I don't know who's moving into my region unless somebody calls me up and says, hey, I just moved into your region.
Sure. Like let's get that sorted out, because goodness knows we need to have that information.
I had suggested all the clergy get geochipped, and nobody takes me seriously.
Yeah, we'll just microchip the priests, and then you can like log into like the website, and it'll just ping on the map of the United States where we all are.
Absolutely. What happens though here? I'm sorry, Aaliyah, did you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I wanted to suggest something, since we're kind of also on the topic of the website improvements. And this may be already in the working, but if we're going to do something about being able to locate clergy, perhaps there could be a way to put in a skill that you need, like a keyword, and it would take you to those clergy members that can perform that skill.
Yeah, I think the moving away from Facebook and moving to a more neutral space like the website is a good way to go. And I don't know if this is in the works, but if once the website gets secured away, having some of that information in the oak leaves that gets printed every once in a while, that would also be good for people. Not everyone is connected to the internet. So those who are a little more remote, having it in the oak leaves as well would be a good place to promote that, even though, I mean, that's going to change from time to time, but that might be something to explore as well. William, did you have anything? Did anyone else have anything else they wanted to add to that discussion? No, we're good. So what if you're an ADF member, you have reached out to clergy, maybe one or two people, or that you're looking for something and you're not getting a response? When people are busy, time zones are a thing, life is a thing, and you're trying to get an answer and you're not getting responses from clergy. What other avenues can you explore as a member of ADF to get your needs met by clergy?
I would reach out to the members advocate at that point. That's really what they're there for, is to help membership.
I mean, there's like 30 something of us as well, you know. I mean, it doesn't have to be that one priest. There's 30 something shots that you could take. Somebody will get back with you, I'm quite sure, to help you out.
Yeah, and the members advocate, I believe, has a service level. Am I correct with that, Drum? A minimum response time?
I think that it is. I think for complaints that there is a minimum response time, but I think in general, they're pretty efficient. So I don't think things are going to drop through the cracks with that.
Yeah, and I have had that happen. Like I said, I'm the most junior of the priests on this call, and so there have been times when I needed something and couldn't get something, and as soon as I reached out to the members advocate, it got sorted, and that has happened once before I was a priest, and then once since I have been a priest, and it's been like, that's their job, is to make sure those things get picked up.
Right. Also, I think there's links on the website for the ADF office. If you send a message to the ADF office, it's not only seen by the office staff, but by a number of other people in leadership. So, but, I think Lauren's endorsement of the members advocate response is, I think the way to go.
Who is the members advocate right now?
Mike Kahn, K-A-A-N.
Great. All right, excellent. Let's just do a check-in. How's everyone doing? Are we enjoying our experience? Yes, good. Raise our mugs, refresh our teas. I think this is going very well. Thank you all for taking part. To our panelists, if there was one aspect of your role as clergy that you could change, what would you change?
Paid. I want to get paid. The tremendous amount of work that all of our clergy puts in, even if they were getting minimum wage for that time, if they're getting half minimum wage, it would be a reciprocal blessing. I would change the feeling of non-reciprocity that a lot of clergy wind up with over time, that there's not, there's no gabo, there's no give and take, there's not a balance in that. It feels a lot of times, and this is my experience, it can feel one-sided. So I would like to change that. I would like to increase reciprocity.
Something that I know a lot of our priests have started doing, and that I do on and off, is keeping track of the amount of hours that we spend in a given month. I know Reverend Jana Vende publishes that on her Patreon every month, what she has done in the last month. I believe Mike Dangler also does that, because there's a lot that people don't see, especially if you are a priest in a grove. When I was both priest and senior druid of Nine Waves Grove, it was fully a part-time job. I spent between 15 and 20 hours a week working with the grove, and that did not include the time that I was spending on the Mother Grove at that point in time. And so it's a lot of that work just seems like it happens. It just happens, right? the organizational stuff, all of the Grove stuff, you know, that people are getting taken care of, you know, the time that it takes to drive to a thing, all of that factors into burnout on our end, especially when it's unknown. And I think that's why some of us have started tracking our hours and making that public, because previously that information was only known to other priests. It was something that you know, you report every year on what you've done in the last year. But it takes a lot of work. And we all go through cycles with that work. If I could change any one thing, I wish I could give more time to priesting. And that goes back to what William was saying with it being paid. For those of you who don't know, I work in marketing technology. I'm a marketing automation specialist for a healthcare company. That job sometimes is a 60-hour-a-week job. And if I'm working 60 hours a week, my ability to priest on those weeks is limited, not just because I am working 60 hours a week, but because that takes a lot of my emotional capacity. And this job, this calling, this vocation of priesthood takes a lot of emotional energy. It takes guts, and it takes forethought, and it takes putting aside your own emotions, and it takes emotional energy to sit with somebody who is in crisis, and all of the things that people need from priests, right? And that legitimately that we sign up to do, right? That's part of what we're here for. That's part of why we're all here. And it's hard because there is no reciprocity in terms of a financial sense. You know, I recently am, as of like 6 months ago, a full-time step parent. I had never had children before. That's hard. It's hard to priest when you have a 12-year-old. And those kids need you, and your partner needs you, and there's a reason that the minister's spouse is the whole thing in Christian communities. So that's probably the hardest thing for me, is wishing that I could give more time and knowing where my own limits are, that I have to say no sometimes.
Excellent. Thank you, Lauren. About our other two panelists, is there something that you could change, an aspect of your role that you could change?
I think that I think Lauren brings up a good point. I mean, there are so many hours in the week, and you know, we try to do as much as we can, and the realities are sometimes work does get in the way, and the rest of life gets in the way. So it would be nice to have more time. It also would be nice to, I mean, COVID has kind of stressed everybody in the last couple of years, because, you know, we do lose that sense of face-to-face. We have in the clergy initiated monthly Zoom meetings, which are a good way for us to see each other and to talk with each other, because talking in Zoom, while it isn't ideal, is a lot better than sending emails to people. It's so very impersonal, and it's nice to see people's faces and to be seen. So, you know, if we could have more contact, not only with other clergy, but with other people as well. I mean, things are starting to open up somewhat, but, you know, I live in Toledo, Ohio. Michigan is just north of me, and, you know, COVID is pretty rampant up there right now. So it's, you know, the realities sometimes get in the way. So more public, you know, more access to membership and others would be nice.
All right, thank you. Aaliyah?
Yeah, I've been sitting here trying to put my words in order, because I want to make this sound intelligent. But, you know, one thing I would like to change is my platform, because so many people are not familiar with ADF down here in Florida. And when I tell them I'm a Druid, they're not even sure what a Druid is. And I spend so much time just explaining that I'm a Druid, that I'm a member of ADF. And if I could change one thing about my role, it's not so much the work that I do actually do, but it's that there is more public awareness of what I do. And that kind of goes back to what William said. William talked about being paid. Well, being paid is a form of recognition. You know, even if you have the worst customer in the world, but at least they pay you for your job, then you're recognized for that work that you put into it. And I've put a lot of work into trying to be seen and visible down here. And sometimes I get the reward, and sometimes I wonder why I'm still doing it. And then I realize that I'm doing it because I love it. But that's what I would change.
Well said.
Okay, excellent. Let's see. So those were pretty much the questions that the panelists were told about. So I'm going to move into the ones that they don't know are coming. Actually, building on what we just talked about, how do you find the time and balance between the expectations of your calling and your regular mundane life?
I'll just come out and say we're all bad at it. Every single one of us. We have good days and bad days, but we're all bad at it. And we all, like, we talk about that. Like, how do we do this? Because this, you know, priesthood, vocation, calling thing could be our whole lives. For some of us, it is at sometimes our whole lives. And I certainly am in a rebalancing phase for that, to go from being a single person with a grove of 30 people to having a family of 4 and no grove. Like, what does vocation look like? How does that balance work? And I don't have a good answer.
So a little transparency on my side. Sorry, Jon, did you want to jump
No, William, please go ahead.
in? My situation is unique. I invested wisely as a young person, and I'm in a situation where I can afford to full-time priest. Like, my full-time job is in service to this grove, to Mountain Ancestors Grove. It's a unique blessing that not everyone shares. So I just want to be transparent and recognize that in the beginning. The other thing too is, if we're going to call ourselves druids, you know, aside from priest, you know, let's say that, especially us, if you're a priest, this is specifically for us. But just in general, if you're gonna run around showing your druid card off, being like, I'm a druid, part of that comes with the responsibility. And even though you may have to do something that doesn't look like big religious with all the stuff druiding, when you are an IT professional in Jon's case, or when you are a marketing professional in Lauren's case, or a healthcare professional in my wife's case, you're always druiding. Even in those places, you are the representative of the land and the spirit of that wisdom that comes with being a representative in all places. So I really discourage people from separating something that is really a holistic experience. Like, our lives are a holistic life. Like, to compartmentalize these things, I think cheapens our experience as druids, especially ordained ones. Like, we're always on the clock. That's kind of how it is. Even though we set up these boundaries, and which we should, professional boundaries are a thing, that doesn't mean that we're not always trying to embody the wisdom of the land, the wisdom of the gods, the wisdom of our ancestors, and trying to embody this at all times, whether we're talking to our kids, whether we're selling something, if we're in sales, it doesn't matter. Like, we're always doing it. So I really encourage us not to compartmentalize the experience of being a druid into, well, I drew it on my, you know, the time that I could make for it, but really I got to like work over here digging ditches. It's like, no, you're a druid that's digging ditches. Like, that's what you are at all times. So with every scoop, there should be an opportunity for a lesson, not only for yourself, but for those around you, folks next to you digging them ditches. So
This is why I listen to William.
God bless you, Lauren.
No, I have to agree with William. I mean, I'm a Druid who happens to be an IT professional. You know, I'm fortunate in my life that because I'm an IT professional, I have a certain amount of I can do my work. I don't have to do it in a particular place. I can do it in a number of places, so I can go from here to there and still do it, whether I'm in this continent or someplace else.
It's a real blessing.
It is a blessing, honestly. I am, you know, I
Mhm.
don't take that for granted, and I'm fortunate. You know, most of my administrative stuff or priestly stuff I do in the evenings when I have more free time. Although I have to do it during the day sometimes as well. And I'm fortunate that in my life situation that I can do that. It's you know, being a Druid is a full-time. Being a Druid is a lifestyle. It is your life, and being a priest is a part of that. And I think that they all blend together.
Well said.
And you know, to tie on to that, I am also a remote professional. I work out of my house, which means I can literally work from anywhere there's a Wi-Fi connection. But I'm also a parent in the evenings. So literally, we all trade off from each other. I am more available at 10 o'clock in the morning if I can make time for it and put it on my work calendar than I am at 6 o'clock at night, just because that's just how my life has shaken out right now. And that's independent of all of us as priests. And that's only something that you find out when you reach out to us. And we refer out to each other 100%. Like, there are things that I will call Drum for, and things that I will call William for, and things that I'm learning to call Aaliyah for. Although, you know, this call is, I think, the first time we've met face to face, which is a real shame. And so that kind of trade-off is something we as priests are learning to be better about, and knowing our own lives and knowing when we can refer to each other and when we can take calls and those kind of things.
I'd like to say something here. Last February, I got into a little debate at my UU. I requested to lead the service for Martin Luther King's birthday. And there were people that looked at me and they said, well, aren't you a pagan? What does a pagan know about Martin Luther King Day?
Oh.
And
Oh boy.
And I said, well, I'm a pagan, but I'm also someone who's well aware of the importance of Martin Luther King Jr. and I want to have a chance to represent him on the service. And it was actually really well received, but it was like, there's that, oh, well, you're a pagan. No, you're always a pagan. You're always a Druid. You're whether you're digging ditches or doing IT or working in marketing, you know, we take that part of us that is a Druid and it influences everything that we do.
Yeah, I had years ago, I had somebody ask me, had not seen me for a while, and said, so are you still a pagan or do you have a job now? What?
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Okay, thank you. We are getting on, it is almost 2 o'clock my time. We have another 30 minutes to the panel. I just have a few more questions prepared. And once we get through the questions, I'm going to open the floor up to the people who are listening in if they have any questions. So please prepare your questions. If you have questions for our panelists, I will be opening the floor to you. What do we have here? How did you, well, aside from Lauren, because Lauren was thrown into the clergy by William, aside from Lauren, although Lauren, if you have an opinion on this, I would certainly like to hear it. How did
I definitely do.
How did you know that being clergy was the right decision for you? How did you make this leap from being a member of ADF who refuses to do his Jedekin path? I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about other people. People who are members of ADF and make that leap into being clergy. How did you know that this was the right decision for you?
Take a pop at that one. I actually held off on doing my Dedekin program for a long time. And you know, I had the chance or the opportunity to see other ADF priests at work, and I admired the work that they did. And I had also done some priesting in other traditions before I became an ADF priest, and I felt that the call to service was an important thing for me. So when I became an ADF priest, it was kind of like I really didn't know what I was getting into. I knew some of the people, but I didn't know what we did, and so it was kind of a leap of faith, if I can call it that. And I don't regret doing it. I think it was a good thing, but it was kind of scary at first, honestly.
All right, thank you, Drum. Anyone else?
Yeah, sure. I grew up Catholic, and a lot of New Orleans is Catholic, so I grew up Catholic, and I had vocation as a kid, and that vocation was fostered by my parish priest and everything else. And graduated high school, applied to Notre Dame Seminary, and got through 2/3 of the process. Truth be told, the last third was I had to write an expository essay on. Pretty much, I was given very little boundaries. 18-year-old kid with vocation, as it were, who has no boundaries. Go for it. And they asked me to write stuff, and the stuff I wrote, I thought it was being pretty, like they asked me to like blow them away. I'm like, I'll do my best. And like in most cases, come off salty and abrasive with strong opinions, et cetera, et cetera. And long story short, what I wrote, they did not like. I wrote an essay on why Jesus didn't have a monopoly on miracles, and anybody that had the egolessness to accept the fact that they are just as divine as Jesus, because you can't subdivide God. You can't say there's only like 1% God here, but there's like 12% God here. It's not how God, as it were, worked. And they didn't want to hear that. They didn't want to empower people. They wanted to support their agenda. And as a grumpy 18-year-old kid with problems, my dad just died at the time, and so I was real salty. So I told them to, in no uncertain terms, that our relationship had ended, and I asked to be released from any vows in Catholicism. And I wandered about aimlessly for a while, and that calling, as it were, got quieter because I was walking away from the place that I first heard it. Religious walkabout, et cetera, et cetera. I found paganism, and I found Wicca first. And, the shtick with Wicca is everybody can be a priest. And I'm like, swell, wow. So my vocation starts chirping again. Long story short, there's a decade or more of religious walkabout, but to save you the time and to make time for others. A priest is something that I've always known that I'm supposed to be. How that was going to manifest did not become clear until I was exposed to ADF for the first time. Post my Wiccan experiences, when I came across ADF. And I've only known ADF for a very long time. Over 10 years, I'd only known ADF through the work on the website. I'd never gone to festivals. I'd never hung out with, everybody's like, oh, I had this time where I hung out with Isaac and we had this great thing, or I hung out with Ian or Drum, or, and I never had that. The only exposure that I had to ADF was the academic works that they chose to make available. That's it. And then my mom died. So I needed something to do with my dead. And that's when I found ADF again. At the time, I was exploring Judaism. I was one trip from the mikveh and one ceremonial circumcision away from my conversion being complete. I was going to be a Jew. And then my mom died, and the death practices there didn't feel right for my mom. And the thing that felt most natural and real for me was those death practices and that perspective that was given to me years ago from ADF. And that's when I found my way back. My vocation was very loud because I've been standing still and it's been catching up to me. And that's when it hit me again. So that's how I ended up being a priest, but really that's how I ended up finally standing still long enough to accept that this is the work that I'm supposed to do in the world. And it's, I think, a blessing to be able to bring a vocation that's been with me for my whole life into ADF. I think the things I have to offer are strange and unique and necessary, or I wouldn't say them. I'm an INFJ, so if I'm going to say something, that means I really thought about it and that it's meaningful to me. So the things that I say are gifts, as it were. So yeah, anyway, thanks for making a short story a little bit longer than I expected.
It was interesting.
I also came to ADF with a lifelong vocation. I've known I was supposed to go into ministry since I was 7 or 8 years old. Pursued Protestant seminary and thought about that hard as a teenager, and then got it was very clear that where I was not where I was supposed to priest. And then I hit up Catholicism on the way around and was told that I couldn't priest. And I was like, all right, like, fuck that. And found myself also in Wicca, in Gardnerian Wicca specifically. And I was all but an essay away from my initiation and was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And the high priestess of the coven said, I won't have a bipolar initiate. Bye.
What?
And yeah, I didn't know you didn't know this story. And so in May of 2012, when I was supposed to go into, I had been supposed to have a summer solstice initiation, and I found myself not only without a coven, but without a religion. And on the way out, she said, yeah, there's an ADF Protogrove in your area. Why don't you check them out? And so I looked ADF up on the website, saw that there was a training program for dedicants, signed up, and said, I will do this for a year. I'll be a good pagan, we'll do it for a year and a day. And said, you know what, like, I have done the Wiccan thing. I know how that works. I have these practices. I have these devotional relationships, because devotional relationships and relationships have always been the core of my practice, like 100% since I was 8. And my relationships with people have always been the core of that practice. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to put on a druid hat. I'm on druid for a year. I'm going to figure out how to do this druid thing. And I completed the dedicant work in just shy of 11 months. Started it in October of 2011, completed it in September of 2012. Started a study group because I was like, all right, well, I got to druid with other people because it sucks by myself. And I had a couple of people around, and I was basically teaching by the seat of my pants. I had never met an ADF druid. The Protogrove that was in my area was as organized as a ball of string plus a cat in a brown paper sack. And so I bounced off. Like, it was like, I don't know what this is, but I don't like it. But this thing that I am seeing on the internet is pretty cool. And I like the fire stuff, really super into the fire stuff. And I'm really super into the ghosty stuff and the relationship stuff. And I'm really super into the ancestor stuff. So like, I'm just gonna keep doing that and like figure out what to do with these folks later. And I was already in CTP. I was already in clergy training before I saw my first in-person ADF ritual, because the call was that strong. When I hit here, when I hit ADF, it was like, this is where I am supposed to priest. This is where what I want and what I do and my superpowers, so to speak, are needed right now. And this is what my community needs. And so I did it. And I have never regretted that decision. I expected my transition from senior druid to priest to be weirder than it was, but my grove had considered me their priest for years. All I did was get somebody to give me a stole for it. And that work has been ongoing. And what William did, because that absolutely was the conversation. Like, what William did for me was see that priesthood was who I was and refuse to let me hide from it anymore, which is one of the reasons why I still talk to him on the phone kind of a lot, because when I'm afraid of things, William calls me on it. And we sit with uncomfortable things. And that was an uncomfortable thing for me to sit with, was this idea that like priest was who I was. And it was who I was already. I just needed to do the training so I had the tools to be able to do the thing instead of just flying by the seat of my pants. And I've never regretted any of that decision, and I hope I never do, but I am an ADF priest. It is who I am. And it's become part of my identity now.
Thank you, Lauren. Anyone else would like to talk about that? How did you know? How did you know?
If I can make just one more comment about mine, just kind of a, when I was in high school, I took those vocational aptitude tests and identified 3 things. It said accountant, librarian, and priest. And I got a chuckle out of all of them because I wasn't really anything I was considering, but I thought it was kind of interesting just looking down the road that, priest actually showed up on one of those tests. Not that that means anything, but just an aside.
I think it's also worth noting, my grandfather was a minister. I grew up in a family with an active clergy person. And I see my ministry a lot in what my grandfather did and how he related to people. In many ways, I have some of who he is and some of what he did in who I am and what I do. And so like there's an ancestral tie there. He did not know that I was a pagan clergy person. He passed away just recently. But we had lots of conversations about what it meant to be part of a community and what it meant to be a religious person in community. And those things transcend the fact that he was a Baptist minister and I was very not. So I have those support. I had that support as well. And now that he is part of my ancestor practice, I have it there.
So you're from a long line of holy rollers. That's what I'm hearing. Ayliah, did you have any stories to share?
Yeah, I can share a few stories. Actually, rather than talk about how I felt calling, which is similar to Lauren, was at a very early age. I'll talk about what I made the jump to being an ADF priest. Out in Lakeland, Florida, there was a big meatpacking plant that closed. And I had some friends, some pagan friends who used to come over to the rituals over here in Pinellas County, and they lost their jobs. They lost their livelihood, their home. These were people with kids. They needed someone to be there for them. They didn't know what to do, and they had given up hope. That was a big sign to me that somebody needed to be there for these people. And I started looking around at different clergy programs. There was a place in Clearwater called the College of Metaphysical Sciences, and they had a clergy training program that cost about $4,000 for pagan clergy. And I couldn't afford half of that. and I really felt the need to be a clergy and serve other people. And I can remember sitting in the pews in this church while my partner at the time was having a counseling session. And I remember asking, you know, what am I supposed to do? You know, and I felt drawn to, I know this is going to sound supernatural, but I picked up a Bible and I started flipping through the pages, and all of a sudden my hand landed on this passage. And, you know, and it said that, you know, it was about leadership. And it said, and I had this feeling that to just do it. And about a year later, I discovered ADF online, and it was affordable. It was something within reach. It's like it came along at just the right time, and I didn't look back. Similar to Lauren, I completed my Dedekind program in at least as little as 11 months. I started at Beltane, and it was done by the following spring equinox. And I had to get through that Dedekind program because my destiny was to be a ADF clergy member. So
sometimes things just hit you.
Yeah.
And you decide to do it, and then you do it. And sometimes things come hard. My clergy training work, I started in earnest in 2015. And in 2016, my whole life fell apart. My 10-year marriage dissolved. Like everything went to hell in a handbasket very, very fast. And so I put clergy training on the shelf. I had finished CTP prelim, and I was in CTP 1, and it got put on the shelf. And in July, I think, of 2017, I was doing something else, and I got hit with it. Like, my vocation caught up to me and started chewing on the back of my head. And it was like, why are you not a priest yet? Like, why are you not a priest yet? And I was ordained the next April. So like, sometimes things just gotta be right. And then when they're right, they happen. And that April ordination was exactly what it was supposed to be. And I've never doubted the way I went through CTP, even though I did it like in 2 big focused chunks. That's just sometimes it do be that way. And you got to listen and listen to who you are. Listen to other people who know what they're looking at. But also listen to who you are. And if you feel like that's what you're supposed to do, it will happen, because you as a person know what you need and you know who you are. And while clergy training will transform aspects of that, for sure, your core self will remain. There are things you will learn and tools you will gain. You'll get a t-shirt that says, "Hi, how can I help?" and a box of stuff, right? And you got to figure out what in the box of stuff is relevant to who is standing in front of you. And you get better with that at time. But your superpowers, your individuality, who you are, is where you priest. And there are 30 some odd of us, and we all have different superpowers. We all have different vocations. We all have different ministries. We all do things the way we do them. And there's no like right answer for that, because the individual is who is needed. And if you're not the person who is needed, you find the person who is, right? I can't tell you how many times I've referred to Jan. They're one of my closest friends. And they have such a profound experience with certain things that I have never done. And that's okay. Like, I don't have to be Jan. I don't have to be William. I don't have to be Aaliyah. I just have to be who I am and the priest that I am. And listen to that and be true to that. And I think that's true regardless of whether you're a priest or a dedicant or an initiate or just, you know, just. There's big quotation marks around that word. Even no matter who you are, you have religious gifts. You have aptitude that is important.
Okay. We have 15 minutes or less than 13 minutes left to the panel discussion, and then we're going to open the floor up. I've been trying to decide which of my last questions I'm going to ask. I'm afraid we won't even have time to answer this last question, but we'll do our best. Panelists, what social justice issues are you passionate about, and how do you incorporate them into your ministry? Boom! I dropped it.
That's a crunchy one. That's a crunchy one. I like it. Let's go there.
Let's do it. Wow. Are we trying to pick which ones? Is this too hard a question?
No, absolutely not. I just spent a whole bunch of time talking, so I'm hoping somebody else will go first.
Yeah, I've spoken first a lot as well, so I'd like to leave this open. Happy to answer it, but just not first.
Well, I'll go first. I'm passionate about people being treated equally. And I don't care if you're gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered, non-binary, neurodivergent, any of the above, intersex like me, you know, I don't care. I think if it's about equal treatment and equal respect and equal acknowledgement, stopping ableism, and gosh, the list is so long. There's just so many that I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about equal justice for all and equal rights for all. I'll let someone else expand on it. That's a lot to say.
I'm going to agree with Ayliah. I think that equal treatment for everyone is really important, and equal respect for people across the spectrum. You know, I think we go about working on that in different ways, and I think we have different experiences of that. But I think it's really important that, you know, we consider people as people first. And, you know, that's the thing that I try to work on in my own life. I have one of my stepchildren is non-binary, and so it's a topic that's kind of close to my heart, because it's something that I see, and I see how people are treated sometimes, and it's not very equitable at times. So I change my life, and I try to change the life around me to accommodate those things, and for me to learn and for me to teach others.
I am not somebody who works on a large platform. That's not my skill set. My skill set is here. My skill set is one-on-one. And I'm neurodivergent and mentally ill, profoundly mentally ill. I mean, I got one of the big ones. Like, hi, I'm bipolar 1. Like, that's real scary. Like, that scares people. And so my work is one-on-one, and my work is one of radical acceptance. I don't have a platform, so to speak. I have people, and the social justice issues that I work with are in transforming my environment and transforming the environment around me for the specific people that I can transform it for, because I don't have the capacity to do anything other than that work. We all have what we can and can't do. I can work with about 20 people. That's about my limit. And that's about how big 9 Waves was. Our biggest membership was 22. We regularly did high days for up to 40. but that was not my ministry was not high day work. My ministry was transforming the community for the 20-ish people who were there that I had that one-on-one relationship with. And it was creating an atmosphere of radical acceptance where who you were did not matter. And what you needed was what mattered. And of us accommodating those needs and of us transforming our religious work. You know, are you aphantasic? All right, well, let's talk about the two powers without talking about visualizing anything. Let's talk about the gods without talking about gender. Let's talk about relationships without making them monogamous. That's my platform. And I have adapted to that because of who I am and what I'm capable of. I'm not a tank. I'm not. I'm a support cleric, like I stand in the back, but I can do that work where I am. And now the vast majority of that work that I do now is online. And it's one-on-one. And like William has said a couple of times, like you bring your druidry with you. Half the people that I do one-on-one priest work is in the World of Warcraft community, ha ha ha. But that's where the priesting is. That's where people need me. And so I do the radical acceptance work in those communities where I can. And yes, I play both blue and red. I got max level characters on both factions. Like, don't come for me.
That's so Canadian if you just sit in the middle like that.
So to speak directly, so my ministry and the kind of overall spirit of Mountain Ancestors Grove, how it's been built from the beginning, are two primary bits of social justice awareness and focus. First one goes to the LGBT community. My wife and I are both members of that community. There was a time that 65% of our Grove attendance was people that identified as non-binary or trans, because we speak directly to that. We've put a lot of consciousness and time into our rights to make them all gender inclusive. We've explored relationships with deity to try to address some of that hard gendering that happens in the old stories and what those things could look like now as far as qualities. That's just woven through who we are. We have an ongoing presence at our local Pride. We're in affiliation with Out Boulder, which is our county's LGBTQ seat. We're religious resources, spiritual resources for those places. Secondly is our work with the First Nations community, especially when Standing Rock was happening. We were a stop-off point for water protectors. We were a donation hub for anything that they needed. We were coordinating with several different people that owned like box trucks who were moving stuff back and forth. We sent medicines, we sent medical professionals, we've sent all sorts of things in a connection to those communities, as well as our work with BLM and the NAACP. So our Grove's pretty on top of what we need to do. I mean, the spirit that I've tried to imbue in what we call magpies, Mountain Ancestors Grove, and we're pan-Indo-European, so magpie. That's why we have magpie logos. So I collectively call, just like the cranes call all themselves the cranes, for us here in Colorado, at least at this grove, it's the magpies. So one of the things that I've tried to share with the magpies is this idea of Druid is a person who is aware of the community web and how complex it is now in a global community, especially, feels some sort of responsibility for the health of that web and tries to keep it healthy through an earth-based passion and awareness. Like if you do that, it doesn't matter who you are, but you're druiding, whether you know it or not. So it's how to be in the world and where we need to be. When I look around as one of the priests of this grove and see in my congregation nothing but white people, then my ministry has to be, how do I affect these white people to take care of the things that need to get taken care of, that I, as a Druid in this community, am seeing that's broken. I can't do this by myself. I can be aware of it. I can come up with a plan. I'm a great architect, but I need people to help me execute those plans. And God's be praised. I think for the most part that our Grove has been staying on top of that, has been staying relevant in the needs of those communities that do not share the same privileges that we do, as well as double checking ourselves to make sure that we're doing the work to transform ourselves, because a transformed person is capable of transforming the world around them.
I have two little things to say.
Oh.
Oh, go ahead, Aaliyah.
Oh, I was just going to say that, you know, I'm very active in the UU, as I said before. And the very first principle is to acknowledge the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Every person is deserving of equal worth and dignity. And then the seventh one is to acknowledge the interconnected web of all existence. And if you acknowledge that everybody has equal dignity and they're all part of the web, then you cannot not respect and support everyone.
All right, I got three little things to say. One, I think the Magpies are doing a phenomenal job, and I'm super inspired by the work that they do. And I wish that I had the abilities that William and Missy and the rest of the Magpie community has to be able to do that work here, and maybe someday I will get there. The second thing is to go back to what William said at his when he sent the essay for his vocation that got him thrown out of seminary, to tie into what Aaliyah said, and that is that you don't partition God. You don't have 1% of God in these people, but 12% of God in those people. Like, you either got it or you don't. And we as pagans tend to accept that worth. And, you know, the inherent spirituality and the inherent blessings and the inherent godness, for lack of a better word, like I don't have a good word for that. I'm sure there is one, but I'm not finding it right now. That exists in everybody that we meet, and that, you know, the word, the Christian expression for that is that everyone is made in the image of God, right? Like, we could use that terminology here, that whether somebody has my privileges or not, they have inherent worth. And whatever framework we use for talking about that, we can always be doing more to support that. And the third thing I want to say is that's the first time I've ever said any of that out loud about that one-on-one work that I do about radical acceptance. I've never talked about that before. I've certainly never talked about it with ADF as a whole. And that was really fucking hard to say. And so here's me being real about that. Like, that's me. Like, I'm laying it out here, and I hope that I'm being heard, and I hope that there is value in my being vulnerable there.
Thank you, Lauren.
All right, thank you, Lauren. That was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. We are now at 2:30. Unless there's something else that you would like to answer that, finish that up, that question about the social justice issues. If there's any, oh yes, William, go ahead.
So this is one of the bits of my ministry. This is unique. This is not a whole ADF thing. So caveat, caveat, caveat. One of the things that I work with in the Magpies is this exploration of the relationship between a virtue practice, which is very important to us, but also a shared value identity. And I think that's one of the things that's missing in ADF is this actual set of laid out shared values. It's one of the beautiful things about UU and how you can have so many different styles sharing something together because they share values together. So I think that's one of the things that we're trying to put together here at Mountain Ancestors is this idea of what can we as humans that are engaged in this practice have as a set of shared values, because that's really what I would hope, well, that's what we're doing here at Mountain Ancestors. My hope for ADF has always been, and I know I have a very twisted relationship with hope. You can ask me about that if you want, I'll happy to answer. But my hope for ADF has always been that it would step into what Reverend Kirk Thomas has called its future, but what I'm calling its present, like what it needs to be now. And what it needs to be now is a different type of druid than we were when we were founded. And holding those traditions is crucial and necessary, but it's not the work of all of us. And it should only be a part of the great work that is ADF. I think part of that step into that direction of making what some see as the future, the actual present, is stepping into our religious power and the inherent ministry that we have just from the land. Let's leave hearth cultures out. Like the earth can teach us all of it. We can find metaphor in a shared terra experience. So yeah, like we have to push what ADF is in order to find out what it can do. You know what I'm saying? Like you can train in a dojo all you want. But until you get in a fight, you really don't know what you can do. I have 3 black belts. Like martial arts was my druidry for a very long time. Injuries, age, COPD, bullshit. That's why I don't martial arts much anymore. However, my martial art metaphor skill set is tremendous. So like Mike Tyson said, like, you don't know where you're at until you get punched in the face and then the rubber hits the road. So I think part of that spirit is what I'm hoping to bring into larger conversations about what ADF could be. Like we've trained in the dojo, it seems like, with only like minor engagements, as it were. Like we have the power to like really engage the world. And on a core druidry level, like when we get beyond hearth culture, I think what we find, what we were left with and what we've created over the last close to 40 years is something that can transform the world, that can bring people together, that has the ability to see in that pan, what we are seeing just now is pan-Indo-European, to bring that spirit together, but in a global sense. I really think ADF has the power to step into that role, including all the justice things, including all of the things that need to be addressed, but be a world druidry and not just an international druidry, but be a world solution. So thanks.
All right, thank you, William. People are starting to compile their questions now, so I'd like to open the floor up now to the people on the call. I've gotten a couple of messages privately. Actually, I should say that's not true. I got one message privately, and I think Tina is composing a question. Tina Martineau is composing a question. Hang on there. Okay, so Tina can't use her chat right now. She can't use her voice chat, so she's posted in the chat. So she says, I feel like my experience is similar to several here. I started more in Wiccan areas who never fit, felt a pull to Celtic paths, and in searching for how to best honor them, I found ADF. It still clicked. It feels right. I'm still muddling through the DP and have been enjoying the online Zoom rituals with Cascadia Grove in Seattle, Washington, but am not close enough to join them reliably in person. But I've been feeling a pull / desire to do clergy type work for pagans in my area, since pagan clergy seems to be few and far in between. I'm hoping to work through the clergy program with ADF. I feel like that's what I should do, but I'm not sure if I can meet the requirements of working with a grove. Do you have any advice?
You don't need a grove to do it.
I'd like to speak to that as well.
All right, go ahead, Jon.
I'm a solitary priest. I've been a solitary priest for most of my time as a priest. Well, if I was affiliated with the grove, I wasn't really a grove priest. I happened to be a priest in the grove. I think yes, to answer your question, would I still be able to get the priest ordination? Absolutely. There are things as such as solitary priests. Ayliah is also a solitary priest, not affiliated with the Grove, and we have others in ADF as well. So I think that it's a different experience than the Grove priests. I think that we have some remarkable Grove priests that have done wonderful things and continue to do so. But I think that there's also those who can do stuff in the community. When I was, one of the things that attracted me to the clergy was in RDNA, they had the concept of journeyman priest, which is the idea of that you go where you are needed. And for a Grove priest, it's pretty, you're right there. You have a Grove that you can help. But for others that don't have a Grove immediately available, then you just, you do what you can for your, community, whether that community is local or regional, national, whatever it may be. So yes, you can surely become a priest and get ordained.
Especially if you are looking for, no. There is a requirement to do public ritual once you are looking at clergy 2 and clergy 3. But for clergy 1, you can do the entirety of it solo. There is a point at which you will have to have somebody record you doing a core order of ritual, but nowadays with phones and tripods, that's real easy. Yes, what Missy just said, to be an ordained priest, which is what I am, and also what William is, you must do CTP prelim and CTP 1. And then we do all of the magic and bring you in and make you a priest. And then you can be consecrated, which is CTP 2, and then you can be elevated, which is CTP 3. But currently CTP 2 and 3 are not required. And I hope that they continue to be that way, because I have no calling particularly to be any further into clergy training than I am right now. I feel like I'm exactly where I need to be. And if that changes, I'll sign right back up and do the work. And until that point, I am perfectly happy where I am as an ordained priest.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. One of the war cries of the pandemic will be, sorry, I was on mute. I was actually trying to open the floor up to other people, and I'm like, oh wait, I was muted that whole time. So yes, so if anyone listening to the on the Zoom call here would like to unmute themselves, if you have any questions for our panelists, please go right ahead. Please go right ahead.
I have a question for Drum specifically, and I guess Reverend Thomas can answer it too if he's still around, since he was the Archdruid. Previous to Drum, what was the journey to becoming the Archdruid like?
I guess that's a good question. I surely never expected to be Archdruid. I became the Vice Archdruid, and I worked with Kirk. He was really a great inspiration for the, for what I do, and I always call him my role model for that. And I still check back with him, even though he's making faces. I still check back with Kirk quite a bit, because I have great respect for what he did. I guess that's the only answer I have. I wanted to help the organization. I always did. I wanted to be able to represent the people of ADF and the international community. And, I wanted to be able to, I was a solitary person, and I thought that that was a way I could do that and include everyone. Over to you,
Okay,
Kirk.
I'll answer it too. My journey was a little weird. Way back in, I don't know, 04 or something, I got a call practically in the middle of the night from the chenille canopy. I don't know if you know who those ladies are, but it was a group of, at the time, very influential women in ADF, because there weren't that many members at the time. That's why they were so influential, I guess. And they were drunk as hell. But they insisted I run for Vice Archdruid because they didn't like who was the obvious next in line for it. And I wasn't sure if I should do this. And I did a lot of divinations and the whole thing. And essentially, I decided I had to. So I went ahead and became, well, I was elected Archdruid that year, whatever year that was, and Vice Archdruid that year, I mean. And the thing about Vice Archdruid is that there are no real duties involved with it. It's mostly a support for the Archdruid, which I did my best to be, but you could sort of set your own agenda. And I had a ball, just loved it. I had a really, really good time. And at one festival in the dark, I remember, Michael Dangler came to me and said, "You're going to run for Archdruid, aren't you?" And I said, "No, me, forget that. I don't want to do that. Yikes, I've been watching Skip do it. This doesn't look like fun at all." And he said, "Kirk, who else is there?" And I know that sounds very arrogant, but I couldn't think of anybody else at that time. There are a lot of people now, but at that time I couldn't think of anybody. And so I sort of got shoehorned into it, to be honest with you. So does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much to both of you.
All right, you're welcome.
Do we have any other questions? Please go ahead and unmute yourselves and ask your question.
For someone who's looking to become clergy, do you have any resources to suggest in helping with that decision? I'm reading A Practical Guide to Pagan Priesthood, but there doesn't seem to be a good consensus on what a pagan priest is. Do you have any resources?
I think, I think that if you asked X number of ADF priests what it is to be an ADF priest, you would get equal amount of answers. So what I would recommend is that you, reach out to priests. Honestly, they are more than willing to talk to you about it and say, what does it being an ADF priest mean to you? And I think that you'll find, it being very insightful. You've seen, from the 4 people here, some glimpses into that. And I mean, those are not, resources that you can read, but they're resources that you can talk to. And I think that would be a good starting point. We can point you to resources in the clergy training program, but I think that talking to somebody first with some experience would be a good place to start.
If I may jump in here real quick. Don't look for books on pagan leadership. Study leadership and study paganism, and then find your own way to apply them together. Some of the books that I read when I first started out were some of the books by the Carnegie Business Course. They're great books on leadership. My leadership perspective has changed. I try to be more of a servant leader now, but there's a lot of great books on leadership, and you can find something that will fit your style. Just make a pagan.
I think my counsel would be that the book part and forming one's own opinion is a huge piece of what we do as Druids. And I think a piece that sometimes gets overlooked or not put into an as important piece of this is we have to get our hands dirty. Druiding, like serving the folk, is part of our oath when we swear as priests. So that involves humanity, like human beings, which yourself is included. So read the books, yes, but then be like, okay, I got this. I need to try this out. Jump into it. Send your application in. Apply. Seriously, do it. We're happy to read your stuff. What's it like being a priest? Like Drum said, it's going to be different for everybody, but I say, just go for it. Get your hands dirty. Hell. Mm-hmm. What's the worst thing to happen? Well, this isn't for me.
To some degree, you don't know if priesting is for you until you actually start priesting. And some of us attempt multiple different kinds of priesting until we figure out what we're supposed to do. And some of us are grove priests for 10 years and then don't have a grove anymore and have to figure it out all over again. Vocation is a thing, like who you are and what you're called to do, it may stay the same, but like how it expresses in the world changes. There's no hard rules. There are 35 different ways to priest being expressed on the clergy council right now. Even among priests that are solitary, even among priests that have groves, we all bring our own genius to this, and you will as well. So step in, start the process, and see what it feels like.
Step into the dojo. Do it. Do it. You got this. There's 30-something people here to help.
Absolutely.
Like Drum said, like anytime you hit us up, we're going to say, we're here to help. How can we help? Still applies. Jump on in. We're here to help.
All right.
I have a question for the audience.
Go ahead.
And that is, we kind of got into some like hard stuff, right? Like some bits where people were like dig deep, like let's go into the deep end a little bit about what this means and what we are and who we are and all that stuff. In that conversation, what didn't we say? What do you want to know about the real hard stuff, the stuff that we struggle with, the questions that we ask, the times when we call each other and wrestle with stuff? What didn't we talk about there that you want to know about that side of priesting?
So I have a question for you then. In terms of that kind of priesting, how do you know when you're out of your depth? When you're faced with a problem, being a priest, how do you recognize it's like, you know what, I'm not qualified to answer this question? And then what resources do you have to be able to? I think we all have this, as we've talked about a lot in this panel discussion, we have a desire to serve, we want to help, and then sometimes we're presented with things we probably shouldn't be helping with. So how do you know when to move out of that space, and what resources do you have as priests to be able to get the help, that qualified help for the person that you're trying to help? Go ahead.
Go ahead, William.
So when we're going through the clergy training program, we have to put together local, regional, national resources for help, because our help is actually quite limited. Very few of us have been to any kind of seminary training, have gone through CPE, which is a clinical pastoral education. It's pretty much, they put you in a hospice or a hospital and you have to get your skills by throwing you into a fight, as it were, instead of taking you to the dojo first. You got to like get out there and scrap it up. So very few of us have this professional priest training. We're as professional as we can get, and we do have things that enhance our ability to work with others. But so the first part of that answer is we have a myriad of things that we have already been made to put together in our training to have as outsourcing and resources for people who are in crisis of various different levels, and spiritual, physical crisis, or mental crisis. So we can help. I think I'm good. I'm going to stop there.
I think William hit it on the head there. And I think that one of the other ways that we do things is, if you've noticed in the conversations here, William and Lauren speak often, and we have peers that we talk to, and we bounce things off of each other. If there's a question, we'll talk to one of our peers and to try to find solutions. But I think that we know pretty quickly when we're out of our depth, and we try to recognize that, because it would be catastrophic to try to give help where we're not skilled to do so. We would do more damage than not.
Well said. Well
I
said.
think
Yeah.
I think our peers are important, and then knowing our limitations is also there. Know thyself.
For sure. I think that's part of the disciplined mind of the Druid. Like part of that mind training is, you know, not just being able to like do ritual with a smile on your face. Like part of that mental discipline is to know when our egos are taking over. And really, if we're there for someone else and we continue to soldier on when we have no skill in that, then that's our ego. And God's be praised, we're exposed to different trainings and things to recognize when we're acting egoically as opposed to acting from a service perspective. So, disciplined mind.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Please unmute and go ahead and ask. Or type it in the chat and I'll read it out.
I just want to say how much I appreciate the time that y'all have taken to lay this stuff out. You're helping me crystallize some things in my own mind. I have strongly wondered whether the priesthood was something that I could or should aim for. I'm an extreme introvert. I'm very happy working from home. And sometimes it leaves me in a place of wondering, is it good enough just to be a priest for the gods? And I don't think it is for me, but I'm much better at the one-on-one than I am the group. Where do y'all come from that?
Well, I think that we have lots of different kinds of priests. You know, I don't think that it's one size fits all, or we're all come from the same mold. You know, we have some priests that are, you know, really focused on nature spirits and really focused on the gods and really focused on the ancestors, working one-on-one, working in groups. I think that it's really a wide panoply of abilities and interests. So, you know, we would never say to you, you have to like all of these things to be a priest. You know, you can make your own priest. You can be your own priest, and working one-on-one, you know, is a wonderful thing. Or you have priests, some on this panel who do that very effectively. So I think that, you know, I'd say go for it myself.
Yeah, I
definitely
still
go
have
for
to
it.
use the DP, but you know.
Right. We're working on that. You'll do it. I know
We
you
are
can do it.
working on that, yes. I have actually been making some progress on that.
Yay.
Yay.
So just a quick word on the DP for those who have interacted with it and are fearful of it. It is a blip in your paganism. The work that you do is not contingent upon your DP. It's literally like a giant form. Just fill it out, y'all. Seriously, just fill it out. Get some ADF seasoning, sprinkle it on there, and you're gonna be just fine. Just get it done. You could literally knock the DP out in a year, or even 6 months if you take the last half year for your ritual observances and stuff. Like the DP is, please don't make it a challenge. I know it seems very gatekeepery, and for a way it is, you know, for a way it is kind of gatekeepery, because if you're trying to get to the service level of an ordained person, then we have to have some kind of baseline that we're all operating from. And that's what the DP does. It just checks your baseline, and then your reviewer is going to have feedback to help you tune that in a little bit more. But please don't be afraid of it. Like, gee whiz, you know, like the DP is the least of your concerns as a priest. If that's what's stopping you, William believes in you, like for real. Like if you're ever having doubts, if you're ever having like, man, I can't do this DP shit, yo, call me up, hit me on text, email me, Facebook. I will cheerlead you on through the DP, because it is in comparison to the rest of it, it's not important. However, the things that we learn from the DP can sustain us as practicing healthy pagans throughout the life of our paganism. So while it is important, it's not crucial in your priest work. It's just the beginning. It's literally like the first step out the door. Have the courage of a hobbit. Have the courage of old Bilbo at 111 years old to take that step into the next adventure. It's just a step, y'all. It's just a step.
And then drop your Dedekind work into a volcano and walk away.
For those of you,
for me,
those of you, oh, go ahead, Linda.
I'm sorry. Like you, I spent a number of years, only it wasn't Gardnerian, it was an eclectic Wiccan coven. I spent several years, and I was the person behind the scenes making sure that stuff got done, and I was actually a second-degree priestess, and I was feeling more and more tied, caged, and finding ADF was, oh, that's where my organic beliefs go. But Wicca at the time was all that I knew was available, that was structured. But my personal practice was organically what ADF's practice is. And I've done a lot of the DP stuff. For me, it's a matter of setting it all down in writing and dealing with that. And that's part of the reason why I stepped back from being the senior druid for my grove, is I just couldn't do that and regional druid and work full time.
A lot.
It's a lot.
You know, it was just too much.
So Aaliyah just said to break up the essays into small parts. That worked for her. I will say, if you're a binger, which I totally am, hit me up. We will set up an evening and we will sit cross-legged at our computers surrounded by books, and we will just go for as long as the two of us can go, and we'll, pour a couple of hours into it and see where we are at the end. I bless Jan and their curriculum. Their curriculum development is amazing, and I could never do it that way. I am not the kind of person that can sit down and do one question every 3 days. Like, that's just not me. I'm going to do it in 6 hours on a Friday night, and then I'm not going to think about it again for a week. I do things in big chunks of time. If that's the way you work, I have other stuff that I can do in big chunks of time. Hit me up, we'll sprint together.
I'm totally, I would volunteer to help with that.
I really
Lauren, I'm in.
everyone that give me the tips. And
All right. I'm going to put my moderator hat on now. I just want to, can you imagine that 2 hours have just passed? 2.5 hours have just passed by, and it's had this great discussion. So, but I do want to honor the time that we agreed we were going to meet together to release these wonderful panelists back to their lives. It is already 3 p.m. my time, 2.5 hours from when we started, a lot of us. So that is ADF Clergy Tea Time, the first pouring, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks, y'all, so much.
And I think this has been a great experience. So I really want to thank our panelists, Drum, Aaliyah, William, and Lauren, for taking time out of their day to spend with us and really shine a light on the important work that they're doing for ADF as our clergy. So thank you all for taking the time.